There we go.
Right now. My apologies.
No, Wayne.
Sorry. Wayne has 102-degree fever. I would like Wayne to stay home. I have this in the car. I'd like to call this regular board meeting of District 205 to order. Allison?
Thanks.
Here.
Frontis.
Here.
Leswich. Lyon.
Yes.
Pickrell. Here. Sherby.
Here.
Statham.
We're gonna all rise for a moment of silence and pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, at this time is the recognition of visitors. Ms. Boone, do we have any comments? So then next we have the presentations to the board. So we'll start with our student council representative, Haley.
Okay, so student council was pretty busy this month. We've been preparing for Sweetheart Squirrel, and that was this past Saturday. So we made the t-shirts and tickets and sold them throughout the week in the office and outside the lunchroom. And we held all the spirit days and put together the pep assembly last Friday, and that honored all the winter sports and the royalty, and everything with that went smoothly. And now we'll be getting ready for March events and everything.
Great. Any questions? Wonderful. Thank you, Haley. Next, we have a presentation from the Bilingual Parent Advisory Committee. Ms. Liggett.
Good evening. Members of the Board of Education, administrators, and friends in the audience. I'm Kim Lakis, and I'm the coordinator of our English as a Second Language program here in District 205. And I wanted to just do a quick, brief update on our Bilingual Parent Advisory Committee. But first off, I want to welcome two of our parent representatives from our Bilingual Parent Advisory, Mr. Claude Bizau and Ms. Yolanda Chavez. They are newly elected members to our evening and morning Bilingual Parent Advisory Committee, also known as BPAC. Ms. Chavez and Mr. Bizau are parents of students in Galesburg 205. Ms. Chavez has 4 students at Bright Futures, Silas, Churchill, and GHS. Mr. Bizau is the parent of 7 students in GHS, one a recent grad, or in Galesburg, one a recent grad of GHS, 2 at Bright Futures, 1 at Gale School, 1 at Lombard, and 2 at GHS, correct? Okay. As part of the district's commitment to our students who are enrolled in our ESL and bilingual program, one of those things that we are offering and have been for the last 2.5 years is the Bilingual Parent Advisory Committee. Part of the responsibility for this committee is to meet at least 4 times a year. They are made up of representatives from the major languages that are present in our district, which are French and Spanish. They will operate off of minutes, and they've elected officers. Let's see, they are receiving trainings from John Pratt and I on how to run an effective meeting, but also how to gain and work autonomously amongst themselves. So during these past 2.5 years that we've been meeting kind of informally, we have both a morning meeting and a evening meeting that meets once a month to accommodate their work schedules. We have sometimes up to 40+ members who have attended these meetings. So this is just an amazing commitment from these families who want to be involved in our schools, understand and learn how school is in Galesburg, but also in the United States. Recently, these 2 groups have elected members to be representatives on these morning and evening BPAC meetings, but we do not exclude any parent, family, or community member from the ESL population who would like to attend our meetings. We've set some small goals with this group for this year. One of those is to begin meeting formally with set meeting agendas and minutes, but also some operational expectations and meeting norms for their committee. We would like them to help plan and coordinate at least one parent family engagement opportunity. If any of you guys have been to our engagement activities, they're wonderful and kind of a standing room only. I can look at Mr. Bradburn. We're too big for the Discovery Depot, so we are looking for larger spaces. Another one is also to create some informational videos for those families that our parents and members of our BPACs will provide in those native languages that would be information that they would want to know coming in as families new to Galesburg. So we're going to work with Mr. Jacobson to create those and have those videos available on the district, school, and ESL websites. The last piece is part of our commitment is to have these representatives present at a board member. They're going to board meeting. They're going to rotate and kind of be that continuous feedback loop to take information, learn how school board meetings work, be a part of that process, but going back to provide information into the committee, but also bring information back to you. So in a result, we would like to provide the board with quarterly updates on our BPAC meetings, as well as our student growth on English proficiency and how those students are becoming proficient in reading, writing, speaking, and listening. So I'm open to any questions, but I would like personally to thank Mr. Bizal and Ms. Chavez for being our first representatives here tonight. So thank you very much. Any questions?
Well, I read the notes that you submitted as part of our packet, and it sounded like you really some substantive discussions took place in terms of why different languages were represented. It sounded like more than the perfunctory meeting. Glad to see that.
I do have a little bit of data I was going to share, but in 2010, when we began formally identifying ELs through the home language survey, we had 3 in 2010. As of today, we just received 2 new students new to the district from Egypt who speak Arabic, and we're at 133. Again, our goal is to have these students become English proficient, so they're testing out, but we are monitoring them. And so our numbers really don't reflect the number of EL students that we have, in the district who are being monitored, or parents have refused service because they really want them immersed into.
Did you say 233?
233 as of today. There are 2 new ones. And it continues to grow. And thank you to the board and the administration for continually supporting our program as we grow. And appreciate that a lot. So, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we will move to the approval of our consent agenda. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
Is there any item from, that any board member wants removed from the consent agenda? Okay, Allison?
Sorrento's?
Aye.
Russ Ullrich? Aye. Lyon?
Yes.
Pickrell? Aye. Sherby?
Aye.
Banks?
Great. So, for those of you regulars to this happy time once a month, you'll notice that our agenda looks a little bit different than it has in the past. At last month's board meeting, we made a decision to start aligning our agenda with the focus areas that we had found as themes from the community engagement meetings, and kind of try to align our business as a board to those themes so that we can start working towards some goals in those areas. So for our next item, we'll look at focus area number 1, relevant skills that lead to employability. First on that part of the agenda is the administrative report on curriculum. Dr. Aslan.
Thank you. So this Friday, we will be having another Teachers Institute, and we have planned out a lot of activity for our staff to work on that day. First of all, we're going to do a little celebration of the work that they've completed to get to this stage where we'll be working, hopefully finalizing the horizontal part of our curriculum, whether grade and grade, so all 3rd grade are teaching the same skills, all 5th grade, and so on and so forth. Now we'll be working with vertical teams to make sure that what happens in 2nd grade is fed into 3rd grade, so on and so forth, across the building. So if you have a student that you live in the Gale part of the school in 2nd grade, but then you move to the Steel part of 3rd grade, there should be an alignment that shouldn't happen, because we have some mobility, so that we make sure that each student has comparable education. That shouldn't be identical, because we want teachers to teach their strengths, but that they would then hit the curricular areas, the goals, and the standards in those grade areas. So that work will continue then throughout the entire day this Friday. So very, very encouraged, very excited. They'll all be happening, well, not all, almost all of them will be happening at GHS. We do have some work going on at some special education work going on at Silas Willard that day as well, and some extra training. So going to be a very full day from 8 to 3:30, and stop by if you're able. You can walk around the high school or Silas Willard and see a lot of different activities. So we're very excited.
Any questions? Sounds great.
Yeah, absolutely. The staff's done, a ton of work, so it's really, we're really excited for it all.
Next item on this part of the agenda is an update on the curriculum committee. Pickrell.
But we need to set goals for next year for our school improvement team, so we'll need to set some meetings.
Right. Okay. I mean, we've done things, but.
Right, so now it's the time,
Right.
since we have a little bit of a direction here from the focus area, we need to be setting goals that lead to this, so we'll just need to set some meeting dates. So, we'll send out some emails to do over something, get some meeting dates up in the next 3 weeks probably.
Sounds good.
Jeannie, are you around the next 3 weeks?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. So we will be
Great. Okay, the next item under this part of the agenda are the building reports. Are there any questions from board members regarding so for those of you who might be unaware, each of our school building administrators send in a monthly report to us, and it's compiled under this bullet point here. So if you ever want to know what's going on in any of the school buildings in our district, that's where you're going to find that information. So are there any questions?
I have a comment.
Sure.
It's really nice that it's all in one document. You just scroll through all of them instead of reopening whatever number of 8 or 9 documents. It's much easier to read the reports. And you can't miss them either this way, which I've done sometimes.
Here, I liked it the other way, but.
Oh, really?
It's okay. You're not gonna please everyone, I understand. So I will say that it was easier because I was not able to sit at my laptop and do it, and I recognize sustainability is a challenge, and I try to be sustainable, but I did have to print it, so it was much easier to print in this format than having to click on each one. Hey, I apologize. I said, I want to be sustainable, but.
And I will say, once again, I prefer the charts over the graphs. I think it describes the data better. There's not really growth from month to month. It's discrete entities. So I would hope all the schools would go to a chart rather than a graph for the data.
And it's easier with consistency between the schools if it's all in a similar format, so as you're comparing schools.
Any other feedback? Great. Next item in this area is the special education report. Dr. Mashad.
So after last month's meeting, I took a look at what we call, that goes along with board policy 723:23. And it does need some serious updating, especially since the district has pulled out of the co-op. So I started gathering some information, read the board policy. It really doesn't spell out who needs to be on the committee, but I clearly need a board member to be on the committee with me to take a look at the changes we need to make to this. I've already done a lot of legwork. I've recruited a coordinator, a teacher, maybe get a principal involved in it, and start to put something together. And this is kind of the overview of how we discipline students in the district that have disabilities. We're also in the process of revamping our student handbook for our emotional disabilities programs, so that through those half-day school assignments, we're trying to streamline a process. So it's all similar in each school, minus some of the things because elementary kids don't like the same thing as high school kids do. So that'll kind of, it's a separate entity, but it kind of feeds into that whole process. So I'm accepting a volunteer who wants to work with me on this. I'll do a lot of the legwork, but would like that input from the board perspective. Otherwise, in special ed, we've had some speakers come in and update us on Andrew F., which changes how we look at FAPE, free appropriate public education, and some of the things that we need to look at or keep an eye on in our IEP process to make sure that we're looking at individual students and not just kind of getting stagnant and looking at CrossCat as a whole or ED as a whole, but we really focus on the individual student. We have a really busy day Friday at Silas. We'll have all the paraprofessionals there. We're looking at a little bit of training on true time and time cards, some of those generic things that we still have a little bit of issues with. We're going to have bullying. We're going to have de-escalation techniques. We're going to have visual strategies with working with students. And then talk a little bit about confidentiality, the role of the paraprofessional in the school setting, and things like that. So hopefully it'll be a fun day. I have a lot of my support staff helping out. I have Bridgeway coming in to talk about what things are there out there in the community that can also assist the school district with the emotional needs of students. So you're welcome to come by.
Great. Any questions?
What kind of time commitment are you looking for this behavior interventionist committee?
I would like to take the first month just to kind of gather up all the stuff I need from the background. So some of the information quoted in what we're using right now doesn't exist anymore. And I want to update, I want to look at school codes, and those types of things to make sure that those are still tight. So I have a little bit of legwork to do, and then I would anticipate maybe 2 meetings, a couple hours to kind of go over what I've got, kind of look at a template and see if we can get something together to bring to the board. So it's going to be a lot of work on my part, putting stuff together and gathering stuff, but I need input from the committee members as well.
Dr. Michaud, I have to admit a little ignorance. Is this something that we need to have a standing committee for, or is this just an ad hoc?
This is a once a year, we need to review this and update it.
So we should add it to this list then? maybe we should have somebody.
I never knew it was a committee. When I was here before, I just always did it until it was brought up last board meeting that it's one of the, yeah.
So okay.
It's something we've done every year without a board member, and I guess according to our policies, we're supposed to have a board member. So.
That's why we're reviewing our board policies.
Yeah, exactly.
Sound like you were excited.
Excited was the word I was thinking of.
I can feel it over here.
Yeah, when you, there's a wall of your, I was getting working well. Sure, I'll be happy to do it. I
There
would want
you
a committee
go.
assignment.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
I'll update our list.
Okay, next on our agenda is the District Improvement Committee discussion. Dr. Aslan.
Thank you. What I would like to discuss tonight is if we are going to form this District Improvement Committee, which I would highly suggest we do. The idea that I had come up with was that board members would serve as their committee needed. So if we were discussing something that was germane to the curriculum committee, then someone from the curriculum committee or both of them would come. So everybody would have an opportunity to be on the District Improvement Committee, but you wouldn't necessarily be in every meeting because it would be just germane to your committee. But then I really want to make sure that I'm interested in hearing your nominations, not tonight, just give them to me, but for community members. We need to have community members now. Seek out some staff members.
What's their area of responsibility?
Just really, they need to be able to have an appreciation for goal setting, for timelines, for processes, for measurement. Really, just looking at data and giving feedback to the school improvement teams regarding goals, things of that sort. They're really just an unbiased outside ear, somebody they don't even have to have students in the district. They could have. Anybody. Just I think community input is important. And as an added bonus, ISBD kind of suggested you do that. So I took a PA if they did it. So I would just like to get some nominations from you folks, and I'll reach out to them. But I would definitely like to have 2 or 3 members of the community, and then I'll get a couple members of the staff. I'll work with Dave. We'll figure out some people like Dave can figure it out. And we'll get some standing staff members will be on it. And then principals would come every time with their school improvement team, so they would be presenting. And then the board, myself, and whomever else is on the committee would listen to those and bounce the ideas back. So some board members will be there more often than others, just depending on how I get their committee. So if you're on the curriculum committee, I was pretty good at it. You're going to be there a little bit more than if you're on the negotiations committee. Right. Well, you never know. The insurance committee is probably not going to have a lot of work on there. So, but yeah, so everybody will get some opportunity. So I would just like to get the committee established before the school year ended, so that we can set dates for next year and say, okay, school improvement teams, we need to have reports for these 4 times or whatever. We can get those meetings kind of set out. If we establish our calendar in April or May, it's less likely we're going to have conflict if people can't make it. If we get those. Trying to get ahead of it.
Okay, and in that frame of mind, if you could have your community member suggestions emailed to Dr. Asplin before next month's meeting, that would be wonderful.
That would be fantastic. I see Doug out there. He's looking excited. That's probably why he's here. He wants to be on it.
Any other questions, comments? No? Okay, great. Moving on to our next agenda item, focus area number 2, facilities that assist in skill acquisition. Sorry, I'm a handwriter, I'm not a typer, so I'm like making my notes as I talk. Apologies. First on this agenda item is Building and Grounds Committee discussion, Member Glassenbush. I think this is,
I believe we are going to have a meeting on the 20th. And that's all I have to say.
no, that's good.
So everybody knows.
So 20th. Oh, 21st. I've been corrected, I'm sorry.
It's a Wednesday.
February 21st? Okay. All right, and then next is our budget committee discussion, our buddy committee. We are all buddies.
Similar to the curriculum committee, the budget committee, which hasn't met this year, which would be members Cervantes and member Sherby. We just need to set up a meeting so that we can talk about goals for next year as well. So I will send out something just as an alert.
Thank you. And just to clarify, there's a reason why we haven't been meeting.
We were waiting for this. That's true.
Okay. Next, we have an update on district building projects. Mrs. Ham.
We currently do not have any building projects underway. We're just doing normal maintenance throughout the buildings. We've had a few coils and univents that have gone out, which are more challenging to get this time of year. But other than that, it's been relatively quiet, and the maintenance department has done a great job of snow removal, and the custodians have done a great job for their part as well. So we really appreciate their efforts that everyone is safe getting in and out of buildings.
I would like to add, we've had lovely weather the last couple weeks. When I drive by the schools at 4:30 in the morning, it's amazing how much work they're doing to clear all that snow. I mean, you can imagine how big the GHS parking lot is, and it's completely covered in 6 inches of snow, and then by the time the students get there, it's clear. I mean, that is a lot of work, and they're out there at midnight, and it's really impressive. I left the King parking lot one night, and it was not pretty because we were having a snowstorm, and I drove by at 4:45 the next morning, and it was completely cleared off. So I mean, that's a lot of great work, and I thank the custodial and maintenance staff for doing that.
I hate to ask, but I'm surprised nobody else did. Any progress on that window?
There's a window.
Correct window.
No, I have not heard when the correct window will be in. No.
Because that might be noted.
Okay. All right. I'm surprised I was the one that had to ask this.
That's your job.
Cardboard's
Gave up.
gone.
You gave up.
I don't get that close to it and see the lines going
The
on.
lines are going, I would have never known either. But now you can see the lines a different way.
I go by all the time, so I can.
Yeah.
Okay, next is the enrollment report with building utilization. Mrs. Keenum.
But yeah, that's the one where the numbers are incomplete.
Yep.
But there's a reason for that. The building utilization, we found, and it's a good thing we've done this, we found that some of the building capacities we're not entirely sure are completely accurate. I mean, we're nowhere near the limits, so no one needs to worry. But we are going back in some of the buildings where you see blanks on those, where to get 100% verified numbers that those are fire code accurate. So I didn't want to put any numbers on there if we weren't completely certain of their veracity. So hopefully by next month we can get you at least some of those updated, because it'll take some time to make sure those are accurate. We're working.
Are we gonna get together schools as well?
All the ones that are blank.
Okay.
Yeah, those are all the ones.
Three.
That's all that we have that we're sure of.
Okay.
So those are sure though.
Yeah, those we can say are right.
Okay.
Yeah, but the other were 5. Yeah, and once again, we're nowhere near the limits on any of them. We just want to be able to give you the accurate ones.
Right.
Is there any questions about the enrollment report?
Those declines we see, is that common for February? I mean, they went down quite a bit.
Yeah, GHS, I can give you that exact reason why. And I would have sent out an email today, but I was not in my office. So one of the Member Sherby that earlier today, I apologize. But We did find out that we were also counting the GABC students from area high schools in our enrollment. And so that has been corrected, and we are not. So that is the accurate number. We didn't lose that many students. We just shouldn't have been counting as many as we were.
Just on our internal documents.
Right.
Not through SIS.
No, through SIS we were right.
We're
No.
billing the same.
No. SIS numbers were accurate, but it was a great exercise for us to compare the two. We're like, how can we be 143 students off? And we quickly found that out.
Kind of a follow-up on that. I was told that some of those numbers may be from students that graduate. At the end of the term, do we have any idea what kind of numbers that would be?
I could ask you to do something. What was it?
5 in special.
It wasn't a lot.
Okay.
I don't have the number, but I'll find out.
I was just curious looking at the numbers. Yeah.
I'll get you
And I noticed that at the grade school level, the numbers are actually up over the previous month by about 14 kids.
I will get it and send it to you.
Because we're gonna need this information really soon if we're looking at boundaries. That's another focus point.
I appreciate getting the monthly reports too, because it gives a better, at least from my perspective, I can see what's going on in the district.
We need to be consistent in taking notes in 2 different places. Okay. Next, we have focus area number 3. Great, there's no other questions, sorry. Focus area 3, responding to the changing needs of our community. First up is the red community discussion. I actually have emailed member banks. Dr. Asplin and I have had a few conversations about the formation of this committee, and I actually reached out to member Bakes today with some ideas, so we're going to talk a little bit more. So we'll be reaching out to some community members and I've talked to Dr. Asplin about providing some names from some of the buildings so that this is not just member Banks and I sitting and making decisions, but we've got representation from buildings and the community. While the name of the committee is the Recruitment of Educational Diversity, I am understanding that in a very broad term, that does not just mean hiring, it also means areas around competencies and things that we know are part of the standards and evaluation related stuff so that we can help provide the professional development for our staff in the district in regards to this area. Questions about that point? Next is to consider the approval of policy revision sections 1 and 2, plus the press policy updates. Dr. Asplin.
Yes, thank you. This is the second reading now, so this is encompassing everything we discussed last month. I didn't have any in my notes. I didn't have any suggested changes from last month for those policies. So at this point,
I thought there was general agreement that we wouldn't need the administrative procedures or checklist.
correct. And those, right, and those, yeah, I should have put that in the notes. Absent those are policies. So yeah, you're right. Those would come out.
It just makes it longer.
Correct.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Any other additional questions or comments? Allison?
Krasovich? Yes. Lyon?
Yes.
Pickram? Aye. Sharpie?
Aye.
Banks?
Yes.
Cervantes?
Aye. Okay, next is the first reading of Board Policy Manual Sections 3 and 4. Dr. Asplin.
Thank you. I had a couple of questions from some folks, and then I had one area that I think we need to get some clarity on. There's a question out there about organizational chart, and no, we don't have an updated one. And so we need to do that by the end of this year to make sure we have all the positions pipeline, so I would, I would ask to wait a few months to make sure we have everything lined up, but that needs to happen. And then the building authority ones are out of date. I didn't see we had it, but they're not active. So it reflects some positions that don't exist anymore than used to. And so we need to update that as well, and that's on policy 330.
After we get that updated, would those be included in the policy, or
they would get referenced and they would be included in there, like attached to it, but they wouldn't be subject to.
I hate to add more stuff to it,
right, but they would be.
But there should be a way, I think,
referenced,
to be able to access.
They would be referenced, yes. Yes. And typically, in a lot of board policies I have, that typically comes on like the first, after the directory. You just put that
right.
Directly, you put the chain of command right before a board policy point, and just so people can see it quickly. Yeah, but it's not a number, it's just there. So, and then there was another question about policy 350, which was board administrative personnel other than the superintendent. Some questions about compensation and benefits. It's essentially whatever the teachers get, they get too. But there's some question about that. If we have employment contracts, we would really need that in there. So
I personally didn't feel as though it belongs in benefits and stuff like that. Doesn't belong in policy. That's something that we negotiate in contracts. And since policies aren't often referenced, it's probably a good idea to remove it so that we don't do something that's a violation of policy in one of our contracts.
Or on the flip side, to make sure that we're referencing policy when we're creating the contracts, because I think we don't. The contracts allow us, they provide us guidelines when we're hiring in contracted positions. So I think we still need some set of guidelines in hiring non-contracted.
but an administrative personnel, if we did have a contract within the contract, would supersede the law, or would supersede the policy.
Yeah, I mean, the way it currently reads is unless stated otherwise in individual employment contracts. So I think, it's probably the board's discretion whether you leave that language or take it out.
It's the bottom of the first page.
Would we get into some problems if we gave a benefit to the teacher that we didn't want administration in the beginning, and then it's in policy, then we'd have to give it to them, correct?
Well, I'm struggling to come up with a situation where you'd have an administrative employee that would not have a contract. So my position would be if they have a contract, you define the terms of their employment in that contract. If something's not included, they're not entitled to it. I'm not aware of any administrative employees that don't at least have a basic contract.
Okay. So that's the fact that this paragraph is meaningless.
Well, and it says unless stated otherwise in their contract, they're entitled to these things.
Yeah.
So that's the problem there, isn't it?
Well, but if the contract excludes it, it's okay. And that's what Luke's saying, right?
Essentially, yes. And this is fairly standard language that I think comes from the School Board Association, but
Yeah, that is boilerplate, it doesn't mean.
There's no reason you can't take that out.
Rod, you want to know?
I'd like that.
I would too.
And only administrators have contracts.
Except two.
Well, on that being one thing that kind of goes along with that, at the very beginning in 310, under goals and objectives, number 3 says that the superintendent directs the administration, blah, 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 and will meet or exceed student performance and academic improvement goals established by the board. Have we ever established such a thing?
No. No. Now, what we have done as the board, as the agent through the contract, is we have growth goals that the teachers have to make as a result of in terms of specific goals and objectives for the principals for meeting or exceeding student performance through my goals, no. What we've tied the principal's goals to is the teacher's goals through the contractual obligation of student growth, which you did. I don't know what you did before.
Yeah, and I'm not opposed to the principal being tied to the teachers at all. And then on the same vein, again, I'm asking because I'm new at this.
Mhm.
Do we have an instrument to evaluate you? Have we set goals with you? Somebody sat down with you and set goals?
Yeah, I have the generic goals that we said we'd go through this process and then for next year we'll set
Okay.
the discrete, that's why we're trying. So
Okay.
great question.
Okay.
Trying to get these done so my goals become the principal's goals, the school improvement goals, everything kind of flows down.
So does this need reworded so that we're doing what we say we do? Or,
Well, it says they are to do those things.
right?
So, in my opinion, no.
But it says established by the board, just take that off. Meet or exceed student performance and academic improvement goals. If we're not going to set them, then we need to take that language out.
That's a good point.
I'm kind of a stickler for doing what the rules say.
Sure.
If we're not gonna do it, then let's change it to reflect what we're doing.
I agree.
Yeah, I don't have a problem just take by the board out of there, but.
I can just, if anybody's okay with that, I'll just take everything after goals.
Yeah. Otherwise, I was gonna say that might be a job for the policy committee. And you don't avoid me.
Can I ask a related question? Here in the February meeting, it alludes to recommendations of administrators in March. So everyone's been evaluated?
They have to be, I have to be done by March 1st. And
Are
I will be there, I will be done. Am I done? No. Have I blocked out the days to get it done? You bet. So, yeah, I'm working on it. They will definitely be done by February 28th.
Okay, so far we have a suggestion for, so far we have a suggestion for 3:10 to remove wording after goals in point 3. We have a suggestion to update the org chart and reporting chain of command, and then finding a way to put a visual somewhere in the policy book. We have concern about 3:50 under compensation and benefits and clearing up that language. I need for me personally, I'm gonna be honest, I need some time to sit and think about that. I don't know that I disagree with it, but I don't know that I agree with it because for whatever reason my brain's not functioning.
Why it's first reading, so another month to digest.
So I'll digest that. One of the things that I had, I'm glad that you brought up the org chart, because that was one of the questions I had. I'm not sure if you were. One of the other things that I have, and I don't know where it comes from, and maybe it's needed, help me understand. 3:40, under qualifications for the superintendent. Superintendent must be of good character and of unquestionable morals and integrity.
Check.
How does one, my question is, how does one define that? Who gets to define that?
The president.
Where does that, I would be more comfortable saying doesn't have a legal record, because at least that's objective. I'm looking at legal, because is there a way to
It is boilerplate.
Yeah, this is similar boilerplate language, and I think that the reason that's in stock policies is if you were to run into an issue where an administrator did something that compromised their ability to lead a public school district, you would still have a contractual issue regarding their employment, but it's fairly stock. I realize the terms are somewhat vague.
Subjective.
Very.
subjective is the better word than that, correct. So, I mean, we can look at coming up with something different, but that's the boilerplate that you'll see in most districts' policies.
I mean, I would gather that what they're trying to make sure is that they would pass a background check, and that if anything happened that would require they can't pass a background check, that it would come to, I mean, but that would be, I mean, that would fall under our purview, right? Like if something questionable were
So
I mean, I don't know, like I'm not, there are a lot of people in this district that I can have a really great combative conversation with even about what good character and morals and integrity mean and fall on different sides of that. I to be very honest, I mean, I don't want to put us in a position, I would rather it be it should be much more objective, because I'm not going to tell somebody, if I had a candidate that was LGBTQ coming in, granted there's other things that dictate that I wouldn't, or the board wouldn't be able to not hire or discriminate based on that status, but I just, to me, language like that gets into some murky areas, and so if we could find.
But you want to be the board that gets away with the policy saying you want high morals and integrity?
Given the state that the national scene is in, I think we need it in there. Not that I'm making any kind of comparison.
Mitch, this is not about me.
It is not, that's true.
Okay, I read that and I was like, oh.
Are you looking for other questions about this?
I do have a couple others.
Well, this is our time, this is our first reading, so this is our time to, like, you know, are the policies relevant? Are there things that we have concerns with that we're not, like as Member Banks has said, are there things that it says that we should be doing that we might not recognize that we're not doing? So if there are any other, yes.
I have a question about 350. I'm not sure how it ever evolved that while we have other administrative personnel other than superintendent, and there's some work a 10-month contract, some work 11-month contract, some work a 12-month contract. I've never understood the rhyme or reason behind that. And how do we determine
contract?
Uh-huh.
I don't know who originally determined it. I have no idea. I mean, those things usually are apocryphal. They happen because they happen. You know, I would say, the way ours works here, the assistant principals and the principals at the elementaries have 10-month contracts. And the junior high principals have 11-month contracts, and high school principal has 12-month contracts. Because of activities going on in the buildings during the summer, typically.
So we're paying them extra months to supervise the building. It's a lot of money to supervise buildings.
In essence, there is some of that. You know, I would say with our current state of affairs with combining the GAVC and the high school, I would say that needs to stay at least at 11 months because of just the responsibilities, the timelines of getting all that work done. There's a lot of things that go on in the summer with that. The junior high, you know, we can revisit all of them. I would never want to get any shorter than the 10 months than we have for the.
No, I'm not so sure other people have value to the district, though, I guess.
Well, and at some point, you know, we will be talking about, at least suggesting to all of you, that maybe the high school would be better served to be 11 months. Because you know, there are times when the high school secretary has to be there by herself, and we don't really know that we want to put her in that position, to be in that big of a building by herself with no one there. You know, that's just not a really great idea because of vacation schedules and meeting schedules. So yeah, you know, worth being revisited and re-justified.
Right, it's not in the policy though.
Right.
So it just sort of grew out of spores in the earth, I guess.
Yeah.
Member Lyon, once you're a member of the board, you learn all kinds of things about the ways in which school districts work with some, it's a little, and often major data behind it, but sometimes the question is just, it's been done that way. And it just really,
don't.
I will tell you that we've had internal discussions this year about making sure that we justify those and figuring out that they're all aligned and that we know what the work is. And so, we would be prepared to have more detailed discussions about that as we move forward towards spring.
Why outside the policy section? Sorry for the.
Yes, but no, it is, I mean, it's something that as a due diligence, we feel responsibility to make sure those are accurate as well.
I have another question back at that same goals and objectives thing where the establishing your goals was. It says we have, the very first one, number 1 on 310, number 5. I just want to know if such things exist. Develop an administrative procedures manual and handbooks for personnel and students that are in alignment with board policy. I know we have a student thing. I know that. I just want to know if they exist. I'm not.
We are developing employee handbooks as well to make sure that those things are.
Okay, so that's underway.
Through Bushu, HR.
Okay.
Good question.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
We agreed that was a gap.
Okay.
Okay, any more questions about policy 3?
Yeah, just a minute.
I should say section 3.
I had some under 360. I don't know.
I want to point out to everyone here that because of the way the board agenda is put out now, all the blue items you can click on and you'll have access to the documents as well. So that wasn't always the case, but it is now. So if you need something to stay awake from, that would help. 360 or something, I think?
Yeah. Well, I had written, I'm trying to remember why I wrote this down. All right, it says building principal, primary responsibility is improvement of instruction. I think what I was going to ask about that is that the school improvement plan, is that part of their, included like in their evaluation, or they choose individual goals that they want to work on for their school?
Their school improvement plan as it is right now is not part of their evaluation.
Okay.
Going forward, as we move through with the district improvement team, the idea would be that would be tied in. But for this year, it's about their own goals that they've set,
Okay.
and observations, and other, just like a teacher's evaluation, anything that's gone on this year.
So are they around the improvement of instruction then?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because I've noticed on some of their reports, some of them have goals, like we will improve our reading score, we will, or do that kind of thing.
And the
but
reason,
not all of them,
right,
so.
the reason it is that way, just so everybody understands, is, and I'll give Mr. Grimm and the administrative team and everybody before, they put together a really great school improvement rotation. Kim Lakis does a great job going around making sure that those are meeting on a regular schedule, and principals obviously as well. But I wanted to honor the work that they had planned for last year, this year, and so as we started doing this, I didn't want to just start blowing things. So,
That's fine. Okay.
so that's why some will report one way or another. Next year will be a little bit more uniform.
Right. Well, there again, if we were doing it a different way, we needed this to reflect that. So that's what I
Right.
wanted
And
to
so, just so you understand, the state has a principal evaluation form that you are to use.
Okay.
And it has all these different subsets to it. There's 6 different areas. And so they're all being evaluated by the state adopted instrument, of which improvement of instruction is a large part of it, but it's not all.
Thank you.
Is it all for section 3? Okay, now moving on to section 4.
Okay, section 4, sorry, I do have to get, okay, this is a little nerdy. But sections 410 and 420 are mutually exclusive of one another the way they're written. And actually, numbers 6 and 7 in the first policy, 410, are mutually exclusive of one another. So either, as it says right now, board policy 410, goals and objectives, we'll just skip the rest of it. It says operate with 180 days cash on hand and then operate with revenue to fund balance ratio of 4 to 1. If you operate with the 180 days cash on hand, you then operate with a revenue to fund balance ratio of 2 to 1. Okay, everybody follow the math on that one? So 180 days is half the year, and fund balance of 4 to 1 is a quarter of the year. And then if you tie that to operational services on policy 420, it says the school district seeks to maintain year-end fund balances no less than 25% of the annual revenues in the combined operating funds. That would be 90 days cash on hand and 4 to 1. So what we have currently written doesn't agree. So do we want 90? Do we want 180?
What do we have right now?
Both.
No. How much cash on hand do we have?
I got 100 days.
100 days? 180 doesn't sound like a good idea.
That's what you strive to do. So this isn't, I mean, I think I would like for people to think about this, but please don't give me an answer right now. But do we want to have 25% and above, or do we want to have 50% above? Or do we want to have 30% and above? Now, ISBE will say they want it no less than 25%. They will say 90 days. Okay. That's their recommended minimum.
For what it's worth, when we were discussing operating expenses and stuff in June when we got this printout, I have written down recommend 25% of annual expenditures in revenue.
And that's
so
what
that's
ISBE does
okay.
recommend. Yeah.
Okay.
But if we're looking at like 100 days of cash on hand, with our payroll and our expenditures, I mean, and with the state and the precarious situation it's been in the last few years, you know, we're only looking at being able to sustain payroll for 3 months. I mean, we had looked at, you know, different borrowing options, and so I would just, you know, encourage us to think in terms of the state that we live in.
Well, that was my concern was how much money that was going to involve. We kept more than 3 months. It might be a bit tricky trying to do that.
Well, I think it's, once again, it's the goal.
Yeah.
So
Right.
if we have a bigger reserve, if, you know, the state gets into that kind of problem again, then at least we know that we'll be able to open the doors and have kiddos coming to school.
Well, and just to add a little texture to this, so when I was superintendent of a nuclear plant district, okay, our goal was a year's reserves, which I don't recommend here, but because there, if the nuclear plant went away, you had serious problems. So you needed a long time to figure out how to fix it, okay? Conversely, when I was up in the North Shore, we kept about 30 days cash on hand because we got predictable property tax revenues and didn't worry about it, okay? So their goals were much lower because you didn't worry about it, you knew you had predictable revenue. So that's why there's different points of view on that, okay? Like Lake Forest High School, for instance, which has, just to give us context, our EAV this year is what? 450?
400.
420?
433.
433 million, okay? Our EAV, our equalized assessed valuation for all the taxable stuff in the district is 433 million. Lake Forest High Schools is 2.2 billion, okay? So when they issue a tax bill, they get a lot of money, okay? So they don't worry so much about if the state's gonna give them money, because who cares? Because 96% of our revenue comes from local taxing money. So their concern about keeping a huge fund balance isn't there because they know they're going to get that money. Whereas at Reed Custer, where I was superintendent with the nuclear plant, we had a $23 million budget and we had $23 million in reserve because if that plant went away, we had an EAV of $500 million and the nuclear plant was $420 million. Okay, so that's a problem. So you have to adjust based on the circumstances that are in your situation. So neither's wrong. It's just coming up with what they're going to do. But I'm just saying, that's why some have different ones. That's so, you know, there's a difference depending on your local circumstances.
So in regards to making a change in either direction or a completely different one, is there any information that any board member would want to make an informed decision? Are you needing any historical data about budgets, about cash on hand? Are you needing any projections from Mrs. Ham?
What do you recommend?
I would recommend 180. Because I always want to make sure that we're able to pay our bills with the state of Illinois. it's in a precarious situation again, and I have no doubt that it will be in a precarious situation again.
And if you went with that, just so you know, that would mean number 6 on 410 stays where it is. 7 would go to 2-1, and 420 would go to 50%. To make those congruous. Yeah, no answers today.
What are you projecting, given the revenue this year and our expenditures this year? If we're at 100 days right now, where will we be in May?
I would have to look at that and see.
Good question. By the way, real time, number of midterm grads, 34.
Thank you. I love technology.
More than
Is that data that you would like before our March?
This is part of our discussion next time.
And also,
Or
if
she
you want
has
to
it earlier, that's fine.
you want to see some trend data in terms of fund balances in the past, the renegotiations information that we forwarded to you, there's a really nice graph in there that shows previous fund balances from prior years and kind of where that trend has gone. So you can kind of see where it was sitting in the past and where we've been in the last 8 to 10 years.
Any other issues with section 4?
417. Again, it's one of those things I think it says review something.
17. 70 means?
No, I have 417.
Have a
I don't
470.
see
Well, it can't be 417.
I
can
was
it?
just gonna say.
Let's see, I wonder where it is. What it is says board reviews each building's safety and security plans, as well as their compliance. Let's see. Right after.
170 maybe?
I don't know, maybe that's.
Yeah, I think that's.
Yes, it is.
Okay, I didn't write it in.
Okay.
And what was the question?
About
Building
safety.
security plans, district security plans.
Dr. Ashton, 450, do we need to reference the medical trust in terms of payment procedures? There's a second paragraph that talks about that the board authorizes certain payments by the treasurer that don't have to be approved through board bills.
Yeah, we should.
And the medical trust has payments for claims that occur on a weekly basis that she's authorizing.
Yes. Let's figure out how to word that up. You may have a lawyer.
New language.
Yeah, for 450, add the medical trust.
And then in 455, which was regarding the use of credit card and procurement cards, we don't use procurement cards, but we do use a district credit card. And it talks about a single transaction of $500 and then no more than $1,000 in any given month. We just had a situation where we were paying for hotel rooms for IMEA, which was $1,200. So those limits are kind of low. Our total limit on our credit card is $5,000 for the month.
Well, but the $1,000 for that, the $1,200 for IMEA, I gave up. I mean, I talked to them.
Okay, so you gave, but does it say no more than 1,000 is where I read it?
Without prior authorization from me.
Without, okay,
Right.
I'm sorry.
And I
understand
did.
that. Okay, I was thinking they couldn't do that at all.
Right, no, they just have to
Okay.
get my approval.
Okay, all right. And then I put a note on 480, 4:80, the activity counts. It references all activity counts, but we currently don't have oversight of the K-8s. So for instance, the activity counts for GHS, that is signed by the treasurer and follows those protocol for the high school activity count, but not for the K-8 buildings.
Which section you look under internal controls?
Yeah, control requirements for checks. It says all checks issued by the school district must be signed by either the treasurer or board secretary, except for checks from the account. Student activity funds and revolving accounts may be signed by the respective account custodian. Do we want just some?
Depends on how you declare somebody an account custodian. Okay, because if we declare the building principal or their secretary the account custodian, we would still be complying with policy. Now, if we want to change who we designate, that would be different. I mean, that's an internal thing we can do. I wouldn't recommend changing the policy because we still are the account custodian. You're all questioning your arrival here, aren't you? Coach Pickle just woke up and he saw that.
Any other questions, suggestions?
What are we doing about that line about the review?
On which one?
Very bad, the last line about the board reviewing the safety and security plan.
Oh, I wrote that down. Security
okay.
plan on 170?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
we need to make
okay.
sure they'll get in front of you, yes.
Okay.
I'd leave it in there.
See,
We just need to make sure that you're getting it.
Well, see, I'm thinking that might actually be a job for the policy. I'm trying to find you something to do, Andy.
You're doing a great job.
And I know we should be quiet. All right.
Very good.
Well, I will say, you know,
Well, I'm sure there are going to be a few other things like that.
my previous districts, we did that every September.
Yeah, okay.
I think one of the things that I've learned, or that I suggested, is that in addition to the policy manual review, I think looking at it in this capacity has allowed us to think about what are some of the things that we need to put on an annual rotation on our agenda, right? There's some things that we already do. And so what are the other things as we go through this manual that need to be on here annually so that we're taking a look at it? Because then, if we're doing it on a regular rotation, we're not sitting up here saying, oh, that's part of our job.
Well,
that's not looking good.
And one of the things that I will have you all know is that I've started my own list so that hopefully by June, I'll have a comprehensive list of here are the things you're supposed to approve based on our policy, so that we're not, and I'll probably miss something, so keep looking, good job. But, you know, I'm trying to do that, so as we go through this, go, okay, here's the list, and we can decide when, but at least then we have a list of, okay, I'd hate to do them all in 1 month, you know, but if we said, okay, we'll split it up over the course of the year, we can say them all.
I just want you all to know that our job description, our list of duties as described is 314 pages long. That's what we're reviewing right now, essentially. Any other questions about section?
Not all 314 pages today. It may feel like it.
Okay. Any other questions or suggestions about sections 4? Yay. Next agenda item.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Human resource report on substitute pay. Oh my gosh, substitute pay. Mr. Bradburn.
Thank you. We have brought this to you as a discussion item previously, and I have received some guidance from the board on some information. We've got some feedback from teachers that I've included in my report. Thank you to the teachers who have provided feedback. Some of them were good, some ideas have presented some contractual issues which we can discuss. But given the research that we've done, I had a conversation with Laura Dill, who does the sub calling, looked around other districts. I have brought you basically 4 recommendations I think will help with the sub issue. First is reinstating the 3-tiered sub pay program. This is something that we had gone away from. I'd like to bring it back. Day 1 through 10 would be the regular $85 per day rate. Days 11 through 20 would go to $110 per day. And day 21 and on would be the per diem rate based on the base teacher salary, which is $197.79. Second recommendation to incentivize, this is a part of the discussion of how do we attract retired teachers who know us and know our buildings, and was to incentivize them and allow them to start for us at the second tier, $110 per day rate. It's up for us. We'd like to also help our retired teachers with providing free access to Leaders Network. This is something I discussed with Jacobson about. It's very doable to help them with their maintaining their license. We do understand that they agree to sub for us a minimum number of days. I don't have a recommendation on the number of days. I can bring that to you. And then there is a program from the Illinois State Board of Education that allows substitutes to have their registration fees reimbursed. I'd like to promote that and use that. This is one for those subs who have had their license on or after July 1, 2017. So it's, for us, that represents 30 new subs, but at only right now 12 would qualify because they have to sub for at least 10 days. This was part of that conversation. So those are the recommendations. Some of the things that we also discussed with Laura, things that can be helped. We have a lot of subs in May. We have a lot of absences in May. In May, you have weddings, you have graduations, you have college visits, and things like that. So those are some things that we try to plan for. One of the suggestions was to have hire a couple permanent full-time subs. That's a considerable expense, and as I was talking to Laura, that doesn't necessarily address the problem because she does a lot of her arrangement of substitutes pre-arranged, so that we have those people already placed, and it really wouldn't help when we have call-ins early in the morning for teachers that are sick. So with that, you have my report. Those recommendations let's bring back to you.
Bullet point 1. Those are days in the same position or consecutive days working as a sub?
Just 10 days working as a sub.
Consecutive days?
I don't think.
No, so if someone works 5 days in September and 5 days in October, come November, their first day, they've gotten a raise.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about the reimbursement. I apologize. No.
Bullet point 1.
No, I'm sorry. Okay. Day 1 through 10 is continuous, $85.
In the same position?
Yes.
Does it need to be in the same position? Maybe we would get more people wanting to work if they work consecutive days.
Well, but they don't always have the opportunity to do consecutive days.
Given that information you gave us a few months ago, there weren't any days with 0.
No.
We're going to need people every day.
Right. This basically, bullet point 1 talks about long-term subs, particularly long-term maternity leaves and extended absences.
I guess I'm suggesting we look at it as those people are willing to make commitment to us, we pay them more.
I see. Okay.
Just as.
Well, the only thing I would add, and I think that's a great point, is that I don't want to get in a situation where our sub-caller feels a certain amount of pressure, so maybe we have that as a different layer. Like once you reach, I'm just throwing a number out, 18 days total, then we go to this, so that somebody's like, hey, I got 9 days, you make sure I'm there on day 10. Well, I don't need you. I mean, that would be.
Maybe we should look at some way of rewarding those people who give
absolutely
us lots of days.
So maybe that's a separate avenue. So we're just.
So that's bullet point 5.
It will be.
What was there a discussion held with the subs?
Yes.
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 Okay. And now and retired teachers?
Yeah. There's
about what they would need to.
There were some suggestions on some of our subs are retired teachers, and so we reached out to those teachers. And so that's basically what I brought to you as a recommendation of what would be more money, what they would need, and also helping with their maintaining their license.
Right. I think with other subs, like people that have a degree but not a teaching degree, it's probably more has to do with the fact that it's not reliable enough. I mean, they don't know, they can't base their budget for the month on X number of days of subbing. And I think that's why we have such a difficult time getting people, but I don't have an answer to solve that, so.
Right, and come back with this. Basically, if I understand, we bump up to like a second tier now.
Whatever you want to.
You're a tier 2 sub. Tier 2 guest teacher.
And I think not only the number of days they sub, but their availability when they call, how many times they turn it down, they still conflict,
Yeah, and sometimes we do get, turned down, schedules are full. Half days are harder to fill. Plus or minus four. I'll bring that back to you.
Any other suggestions? Okay. Item E.
Yeah, we didn't change.
Consider approval of secretarial handbook. This is our second reading. Mr. Bradford.
Yes, as you said, it's a second reading. This was just some edits to establish employment nature of the secretarial job as at will. Make sure it doesn't unintentionally establish a contract. Those edits are still there for your approval.
Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second? Second. Any other questions? Mrs. Boone?
Lyon?
Yes.
Pickrell? Aye. Sharpie?
Aye.
Banks?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Pastovich? Aye.
Okay, now we will move to consider approval of the cottage rehab services contract. Dr. S.
Thank you. We right up to the last minute, Luke and I were on the phone today putting finer points to this. So, Luke, I'll throw it your way just to kind of highlight what we amended.
Right, so the version that you can click through is primarily what we had. The concern that Mr. Flater had emailed us about regarded, there was some concern by Cottage about how times were assigned. Specifically, they did not feel comfortable having their employees go on overnight trips, which happened a handful of times. In those instances, the district has used separate providers. So what we did in section 2A was to add to the end of that paragraph, except that service provider shall not be required to perform services requiring overnight travel. That would be the only change that happened today that's different from what we had before.
Thank you.
Wayne's the person who had the question about this. Were his concerns addressed?
Yes, they absolutely were.
I sent him a copy of the proposed changes about a week and a half ago. I didn't hear him, so he's okay with those.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any other questions? Ms. Boone?
Pickrell? Aye. Sharpie?
Aye.
Banks?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Pastovich? Lyon?
Yes.
Okay. Next, consider approval of cottage rehab donation agreement. Again, Dr. Esselin.
Yeah, so this makes it like all the other agreements that you approved a few months back. So this is going back to the scoreboard at the field. And this agreement, as you see, looks exactly like the other. We took out the part of the street.
Do I have a motion?
Second.
Questions?
Boone.
Sherby?
Aye.
Banks?
Aye.
Surratt?
Aye.
Glassovich? Lyon?
Yes.
Pickrell? Aye.
Okay, now we move to the first reading of the F&M Stadium naming rights agreement. Dr. Aslan.
Thank you. And Doug Sanders has graciously agreed to show up tonight if anybody had any questions for him too. And I would actually have to ask Doug, how many years ago did this discussion start?
It would have been late 14, early 15.
Okay. So about 3 years ago, this was something that had started some discussion, and for lots of other reasons, you know, it just kind of laid dormant for a while, but there had been some movement on it. So Mrs. Ham and Mr. Slater and I have been meeting with Mr. Sanders and some representatives from F&M about putting together a naming rights agreement for the purpose of providing some excess funds to help maintain the facility over there without making us divert operational dollars to that, so that we can then have operational dollars to keep the other facilities up and hopefully then make improvements. So we came to the agreement you see before you on first reading. So either Mrs. Ham or myself or Mr. Sanders are here to answer any questions anybody had.
So my first question is, I saw throughout the document that it says it's, you know, going to be official bank 205, and I was just wondering if like selling the naming rights of this has any impact on our ability to bond. Like, I don't know how we, you know, with banks and everything, how that would work out in the future, like how much that title is.
Great question, and we have covered that. So
Yes.
Mrs. Ham.
So this, sorry. That does not preclude our ability to work with other banks or to work with any bonding companies in the future. That was something that we had covered in the agreement. So the majority of our district accounts, outside of some activity accounts, are with the F&M.
Sure.
So it wouldn't change anything to what the district is currently doing.
Next question, on the website, it says that the link will be on there and their logo on the website. I know we've talked about in the past having sponsors on there, which is great, and having revenue bring in, but the website as it stands now, I mean, there's a lot of, I don't know, it's not my favorite thing. So I'm getting real polite, but where is that going to be? Like, is that going to be like, is it going to be right up on top and that's the first thing you see, or do I get to see what time my kids get out of school? You know, like where relation, I mean, this is stuff I look at as a parent, and I see what is beneficial to me and my kids.
We agreed that it would land on the front page, but it would not be, it would be like under the banner.
Okay.
So it wouldn't be the first thing, but you would see it on.
Right, and by all means, when you pay money, it's nice to put your space.
Yeah, no, it's not going to be.
Okay.
I could say Doug Sanders canceled school today. That would, unless it's popular, then I'll do it. But no, it wouldn't be the first thing you'd see, but you would definitely see.
Right. Okay, moving on to social media and Twitter and all that, you know how I feel about that, and so I'm just wondering what, like, it says that we need to, you know, promote the venue and its name through, but we don't already do that, so is there gonna be like a certain number of times we have to promote it, or what's the guidelines there when, you know, promoting it through Twitter, Facebook, and all
Right.
that?
If we're naming the field in the promotion, we need to include
Okay.
the bank's name, but otherwise.
Otherwise, there's no like things.
No, there's no minimum, but if we say come out to Van Dyke Field, we need to say come out to F&M Stadium.
And then our last one, like reading through it and then got to the Chromebook part and not really sure why
I asked
that's
that question.
necessary. When it's not a technology thing, it's just naming rights of the stadium and a football field, and I don't know, I don't want to see any Chromebooks like with a bunch of logos on them, and then, you know.
Yeah, we simply saw that as a marketing opportunity for the students, and if that is a point of contention, by all means, we can just strike that.
It's just a question.
I would love to have it struck.
It's not an issue.
Stricken, struck.
Strike it.
So
Who
that would
are our
be,
English teachers in?
I wasn't gonna say it. And then, like, has Luke, you said that you have everybody, but like, has our Luke legal looked at this too?
So I think the 4-year term is about right. I think this first came up when Mr. Arthur was superintendent, if my recollection is correct. one of the other partners at our firm was involved at that point. I'd have to check with David. I assume that the agreement is roughly similar to what was hashed out then. So we may have already done that work. I was digging on my email, but it's long ago that it's not letting me pull that up with a search term. So I'm gonna have to dig through our hard files to see what exactly we did. I'd be happy to review it.
And we actually had Chapman and Cutler, which is our bonding attorneys, take a look at this because there was some question at the beginning of this agreement whether this could affect the tax exempt status of the bonds for the field house, which it does not. We've established that through Cottingham and Butler. I'm sorry,
Chapman and Cutler.
Chapman and Cutler. So they've taken a look at this, and so they're comfortable with what's in there.
And we're not getting the F&M sign they took down on Main Street, are we? No, I want to make sure. We're not getting a huge sign.
No, you got a new logo. That's why they took it down.
Yes, it's a nice.
I like it.
Thank you.
So yeah, we will update the second reading.
Great. Any other questions? It's the longest conversation that we've had about place over there.
It's a better name than Dorothy Great.
Yeah.
All right.
What fund is this $25,000 going to?
Fund 60 or Fund 20 can go in either one. So Fund 20 is your operation and maintenance, and Fund 60 is your site facilities.
Okay. Our policy says it has to go into
The junior partner, right?
well, I gotta find it. It's 2 months. I have it written down, but I want to find out.
Which ones are 20 and 60?
Operation and maintenance and facility site.
And then also on Exhibit 1, not all 25,000 will go into there because there's a list of organizations that will still continue to receive donations.
That's part of the problem with what the policy says. I know because I have it written down. I have written down equipment and furnished newly renovated, updated, and constructed facilities. That's where the money has to go to.
According to the board policy.
According to the policy.
And that is in section.
Well, I have 4:150 written down, is what I have written down, and that's where I'm at right now, trying to find it. Okay, here it is, number 7, halfway through. Net proceeds. Wait a minute. The board, yeah.
Yep.
The Board of Education may enter into agreements. Well, maybe this doesn't apply though. The bank's not a 501c3, so maybe that take care of that then.
I hope not.
Okay. I think that takes care of it. I missed that when I first read it. Yay. Yay.
And she brought up the other one. What is EverFi? Financial literacy. Is that an ongoing program? Is that this year?
That
Consumer
is,
science program. It's an investing program.
Right.
Something
that
that
Mr. Van Adem uses in his class.
Consumer ed.
Right.
Is it a computer program or?
It is a computer program, it's a simulation that he uses, isn't that
Yeah,
correct?
it's a website.
Financial literacy program.
Okay. Any other questions? Great.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you for coming. Okay. Next item is, I didn't write something. Sorry. Too many things going on in my head. Next is consider approval of the 2018-2019 school year calendar, Dr. Aslan. I'm going to imagine this is what everybody.
Thank you. So obviously there's been a lot of discussion about the changes to this your potential calendar and you'll see that calendar that's before you is somewhat of a radical departure from what we've had in the past. So obviously we welcome any discussion. You'll see we would start school significantly later, which would necessitate ending first semester after winter break. And then there was no spring break in there. I think those are the big issues. And then the third one is that instead of putting the 5 emergency days at the end of the year, adding them to the last 5 Fridays. I think that highlights the big changes, other than maybe the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. That seemed to be popular. I think that's about it. Obviously, we can take the discussion from there.
Just a second, Member Pickle. So I will just say that we won't actually be approving this because this is actually first read. So
Correct.
This is our first discussion about this, and this would come back to us at a later date. So I just wanted to clarify that.
I want to clarify something else because we already also really love a good rumor. The school start times change at all? Because that's one of my stuff.
School start times?
Right.
Not as part of this.
Right. Okay, just making sure because that's something I got asked about. So just making sure.
We got enough to do.
Right. I agree. I just want to knock that one out. So.
That wasn't on the list yet.
Are the plans just for it to be?
Well, I think we always look at anything like that. I mean, I think there's definitely some research out there that would tell you that elementary students can handle an earlier start than high school students. I've had discussions with high school teachers about that.
So waiting for the bus in the dark is not a lot of fun.
No. Then if we're going to do that, that's going to be a big.
Just making sure.
Yes.
Just to make sure. That's it. Clarification.
No.
Right.
Absolutely
So this is
not.
purely discussion today.
Yes.
I've got a lot of email bombs. It's like asking for money during the presidential election.
I was amazed at the number of high school students that were able to email me today regarding the topic as well.
Well, I like spring breaks. I think it makes a nice break. I think we should, a number of years ago we tried to do this, we got away from it, saying it's going to be X week, the end of March, and pull it away from the Easter break, because that can bring it very close to the end of the year.
Which it did last year and
So just say we're going to have a spring break, Monday through Friday, and this is the week every year we're going to have it. Yes, it does make the school year go further, but we can make adjustments with that.
Based on the feedback I got, on my own, talking to people, spring break's important, but and compromise would be just going those extra days in June. So that's what I would be in favor of.
Right. That's the trade-off. Is
Right,
that
right.
We'd have to go a week into June
Spring break is
if we kept the start time the same.
right, which I believe we should. I'm completely okay with that and pushing back a little. Spring break is that important, and that kind of break, and if it's scheduled correctly, can be beneficial. So.
I did take note of the concern for making sure that the quarters had the same amount of days as someone who works at a college. We're going through that right now because of our schedule. One of our quarters actually had fewer instruction days in the other quarters, and it can be challenging. So whatever we land on it, like.
And this calendar does as presented.
I think it's the second calendar.
Yeah, and we didn't put that out because
yeah.
And just so everybody knows too, we try to make the third quarter a little bit longer because of park testing. Although now we hear through the Tribune that we're getting rid of parks, so the next news testing.
Quarter is also where you often have days that you miss.
Right. Right. So, but typically that's when you're doing the calendar construction. You try to make third quarter a little, but not.
I had an opportunity to talk to teachers who have worked in our district and who now work in other districts that don't have a spring break, and they thought it would be a challenge, but they've actually made the adjustment and appreciate the 4-day weeks in May because they actually feel they feel energized knowing that looking forward to that time, and it's kind of shorter. It actually, they felt the opposite of some of the concerns that we had listed. I've always challenged, I don't know if challenged is the right word. I would like to see that, this is a better way to put it. I would like to see if we have data or assessment rather than just anecdotal information regarding splitting the term up over winter break. I mean, my child is currently at college and they split their term up over the winter break, right? So he had half of his winter term before the holiday and half of it after. I mean, so I appreciate anecdotes, it's qualitative data, but I also want some quantitative data to go with it. How do we know the students don't learn that well? Yes, I don't want my break having to work too, but I mean, realistically, we're always enhancing our curriculum. I do recognize time frame, turnover, so there were some good points made. It was very interesting to note, just from my perspective, that during the community engagement meetings, the number one concern that we had was about the heat in the buildings. And so in looking at the calendar and looking at ways to maybe alleviate that by starting later in August, it seemed to be the quickest thing that people said I can live with. So I just wanted to put that out there. So if parents or families or community members have questions about, if we keep the calendar under its current structure and they say, well, why aren't we moving the dates back because of the heat in the buildings, that we've overwhelmingly heard that that was a sacrifice that folks were willing to make.
Along with that, there are several things I think so far as keeping it at the current time. I know one of the things mentioned that the later start was that we lose so many children that are in the Chicago area that don't come. They're still going to miss because we're still at school in August. And I think if we start in September, they still probably miss a couple of days. So, and I don't know how many children that affects. I don't know. And my question would be is their attendance also affected by spring break and things like that? Do you know? Do we lose on attendance that way? Because we're not in line with them on that either. So we're going to lose them there as well. Overwhelmingly, the high school and Churchill are wanting us to continue and to end the break. And I don't think the argument that whether the children can retain that over 2 weeks and whether they do this or they do that, but I do think you really need to look at the mental aspect of that. The fact that most colleges do it that way. They end it, before Christmas break. We're trying to get these kids ready, to what they're going to go on to. And I think it truly is a break and brings people back, kind of gives them that oomph to come back and get started again when they don't have that stuff hanging over their heads while they're supposedly on vacation. I don't know. The spring break, I think, is important as well, and I think we'll have families that'll do it regardless of whether we have a break or not. So, but I do think when we had that discussion and we changed to that was so important because of the AP classes and different things that it seemed to be really make a big difference in their program. That point of view doesn't matter to the elementary kids so far as what they're doing in their classes and stuff like that. And I'm not sure if I appreciate it, but from all the feedback that I've gotten, it seems to be really, really important to the at least Churchill and Lombard, or not Lombard, Churchill and the high school folks who do it. They're the ones teaching it. They're the ones with the kids. They're the ones that see their, how energized they are when they come back and it's actually been a break and they're starting a new semester and everything. So I think we need to, maybe reconsider that. We're not going to ever get past the heat until we get to the point where we have all air conditioned buildings. It's always going to be an issue.
Oh, I don't disagree, Member Banks. I just wanted to make sure that the community was aware.
Yeah.
Because, that is one of the things that we overwhelmingly heard, and I also don't want that stakeholder to come back to us and say, well, you didn't listen to us, right? So I think that needs to be part of the conversation as well. And they are all good points. I want us to operate off of data that we know, growth, and all of that. Because yes, I recognize that the high school has a lot writing on it, but that is 1/3 of our population compared to the 2/3 that are outside of that building. And then I will also say, as far as the Churchill, the spring break thing for me, I will just say on a personal note, is a challenge for me, because when we offer an opportunity to one middle school but not another, I would be interested, if we're going to keep a spring break so the Churchill students can go to Washington, D.C., that we look at considering how to implement that program or allow students at Lombard to participate in that, because I just don't think that it's fair that we're going to keep, that an argument for keeping a spring break is so that the Churchill students can go to Washington, D.C. It's a great opportunity, but why haven't we thought of, as a district, to incorporate that or to collaborate so that our students are able to take part in that opportunity as well? Any other comments? Member Losovich?
I would love to be able to start school later. However, having worked at the elementary level and at the high school level as a high school counselor, to me it's, and when we made the change, I would say that at the elementary level, like Member Banks said, that makes very little difference whether or not you end a term before the winter break or in January. But and I don't have data. I just know what I lived at that point in time, and I know that when we would end a term or the semester, and that was back when we were block even, when we would end the semester in January, and then the teachers would have to get failures in, and changes would have to be made to schedules, and having to do that, try to do as much as we could all in one weekend, so the kids were ready to go the following Monday to start a new term or a new semester, was real problematic. We also have the issue, and I know you've all read the emails and the comments about, we have the GABC, we've got kids who are going to start college courses. The teachers have always been very willing to make arrangements to do exams early and so forth, so that students are able to do that. But I still think those are issues. I think the making the break and having that break free of, and everybody feeling like it's a true break, and giving the teachers an opportunity and more time to go ahead and prepare for the third term or the next. And in most cases, it's going to be a completely different class for them. It's not going to be a continuous, since it's on the block system, it's not going to be a continuation of the first two terms. So I would love to be able to start later. There were always issues with the students who coming from out of the district, the students coming in from, for example, the college public school system, always starting after Labor Day, and those students would come in after Labor Day. Spring break, parents take their kids out and take them on a vacation, regardless of when we have it. That if they've got their vacation scheduled some other time, they're going to do it. Those are just things that we have to deal with. But my vote would be to still be able to maintain the first two terms before winter break, and have that break and then come back third and fourth term. I thought that there were some things I really liked about the 1920 one, and in that case we ended it before. And then I wondered about taking, and this is before everybody was talking about spring break, I wondered about taking those days that we had down for our emergency days at the end, 4 of those, and moving them up into spring break, so that if we did have snow days, then we would start, other schools.
I would tell you and I had that suggestion a lot, and that's been tried some places, and that didn't work out so well. So
Okay.
people made plans,
People
and you had snow, and then, just like you said,
They go anyway.
they go anyway.
They go anyway.
So at the end of the year, it's a little, I understand, I thought the same thing, but as I looked into it and talked to some other superintendents that had that, they're like, don't do that. Instead, people will just take them off.
Right. I mean, they go whenever they got their, and I always wondered about that, because I would never have dreamed of doing that with my family. But we never took spring break and used it. I mean, that was just kind of a relaxing time. We never took it and used it for a vacation. We always did that in the summers.
Well, and I will, as I told the teaching staff that was here when we started this process, I'm here anyway. So whatever anybody wants to do is fine by me. The thing I would tell everybody is it's really parent friendly to do the 5 Fridays at the end of the year. Because then they know within a variance of a day when the end of the school year is, they can start planning camps, vacations. And I've already spoken to Y, and we can do programming here. But in the buildings, on those days for parents who need childcare or younger kids, it really has been a parent friendly thing in my previous district where people that knew, okay, I don't have a week of variance, I can start. I know that there's a 1 day difference by the end of the year by putting them those last 5 Fridays. It's really a positive thing. The rest of it, hey, whatever everybody wants to do, we'll do it. Being the only one up here that's tried that schedule, I would encourage you to get that.
I would be interested in seeing how that works, because initially when I saw it, and again, there's a teacher in me, the children are ready to come, elementary children are ready to come back to school in mid-August. They're ready. They're anxious and they're excited about going back to school. Same token, in May, they're ready to be done. And I'm thinking, oh man, what's a 4-day week gonna do? Is that gonna make them, get that way, more so? Probably not,
No,
I think it's an interesting concept.
I will tell you, at least at Farmington, and we kept pretty strong look at the data on that, was that our attendance actually went up during that month, and our incidence of discipline went down.
Yeah, that's good.
It was one less day to be
Well, but it was just more folks who was like, hey,
Right,
you made it to Thursday, come
Well,
on, it's
yeah,
good.
and in May, like in August, they're ready to come, and in May, they're thinking about it's time for school to be over. So you're right, that way it kind of, oh yeah. It's fun.
And here, if we did it, one of the things that somebody asked some really good questions about, hey, AP tests are given on Friday, we'd have to work around.
Yeah,
We'd have to
yeah.
make people committed proper,
Yeah.
but I don't think that's.
Yeah, something like that.
Might be nice for it to be quiet in the building, so.
That was a comment also that was made, and that's very valid, because remembering when I was there, and plus you've got the students who aren't.
I have concerns when I shared with you earlier that, while this is a discussion item this month, it would be an action item next month. And based on lots of the emails and conversations I've had, they were all presupposed the schedule that we currently have in our contract. We don't have a contract for next year, so I feel really strongly we shouldn't have a calendar based on that until we have such a contract. I think we're putting the cart in front of the horse by doing that.
Well, and because you brought that to our attention, Member Lyons, Dr. Asplin actually looked into when we must have a calendar.
June 15th.
Right.
Just always behind, always behind, every year.
So we know how Mickle feels.
Well, everybody else has to find daycare and find things, and frustrating.
What are we behind on? I'm sorry.
Like our calendar approval, like every other person I know is like, oh, we've got our calendar for next year in January, and we've always, since my kids have been in school here, it's always, we don't, it's not ready yet. It's just a long process, and it's frustrating.
I would love for us to have a contract, you're right.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, that'd be even better.
We can put the cart and the horse in the right order.
Yes.
Okay, so there's a lot of feedback.
Yes, it was. So,
You mentioned data. How do we, I mean, if we're talking about data.
Well, that's the challenge at this point. You know, to be honest with you, it is probably one of the areas that this district could do well to improve on.
Bless you.
Because we don't track a lot of that stuff. I'm not saying it's a sticking point for me. Do I agree that it's great to have that done by break? I do. I think part of my challenge, more so actually, is that we have a tendency to create our breaks around Christian-themed holidays. And I don't know that that necessarily is something that we have to do. I think that we can, if we're going to have a spring break in a calendar, if we're going to break, you know, if it's going to be a break, then, you know, perhaps we look at the calendar and we say, we know we want, and these are just arbitrary numbers, we want 45 days in each of our quarters. What does a calendar look like to do 45 days in a quarter, and base it around that? But I mean, currently, the way we function is around Christian-themed holidays, which are Christmas and Easter. If we want to keep it around Christmas, that's fine, because there are other holidays that are celebrated around that time as well for other faiths. But I don't think that our spring break needs to be focused around the Easter holiday.
Well, and if we were looking at colleges again, there are many colleges, I mean, they have a spring break that is more conducive to their entire calendar. I mean, it is more in the middle, you know, between you know, the beginning of the second semester and the end of the second semester.
Right.
Is there a requirement as to how many days have to be in a quarter? Or are we just arbitrarily picking?
The only requirement from our standpoint is you have to have a certain number of minutes for Carnegie units, and we have to work that up. So that's I don't know. I can find out. Our only requirement from the calendar standpoint is we have to have 174 days. How we divide up the quarters and all that. We have a little bit. We have to have 185 days actually. It's not our calendar. You have to have 5 emergency days. You have to have a certain number of parent-teacher conference days. You have to have Teachers Institute days. All this stuff. So 174 student contact days.
I think with that in mind, you want to structure a calendar so that your educational quarters are equitable.
We're pretty close to having it
It's
down.
almost identical.
Right.
If we did, we could end our semesters prior to the holiday.
If you started late, well, yeah, I mean, there's.
If you eliminate, you know, instead of having 2 institutes, you have 1 instead of, you know, kind of moving your holidays around. To push it all up so you have 2 shortened quarters.
The problem with that
Too
is
long
in the
for the
4
end of
block.
the year.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's,
That gets
I'm
tough
not an
with
educator.
driver's ed, and that gets
Yeah.
tough with some other things, that becomes problematic. I'm not saying we couldn't do it, but with the 4 block, it exacerbates it because, you know, when I taught 1,000 years ago, I had class all year, and so I could just go, okay, I didn't get to the first semester, I'll get to the second semester. Well, in high school, you teach something the first semester, you will teach that exact same class second semester with a whole different group of students.
Okay.
And so there becomes some equity questions there. Once again, it's not insurmountable. I mean, you know, my answer is just give finals before Christmas, and then when they come back last week, do some thematic units or something, do something fun. I don't know. I mean, you know, if you want to get around it, we kind of make our own problems on that.
So it is doable.
Well, looking at last year's calendar with the early start, the first quarter was 42 and the second quarter was 44. So it was actually longer, and the break was still on Christmas time. So, but.
Well, how about this? Next month, I will bring back 2 calendars so you can vote on something or not vote on it or table it or whatever you want to do. I just got to make sure I bring something so that there's something to vote on. So how about I do that? I'll have one with a later start and one with an earlier start, and they'll both have a spring break. How's that? And it'll be the last week of March. Still gonna have the 5 Fridays in there. That's on both options.
And the Wednesdays are real popular.
as a discussion
The
item?
The Wednesday before Thanksgiving.
Oh, the Wednesday, oh yeah, that'll be involved.
And if you're the person that does the cooking, that's a good day to have
Once
off.
again, that's-
Timberline, you can actually make a motion at that time to table it.
You can, yeah, we can have that discussion. We can cover all eventualities. But I'm putting the 5 Fridays at the end of the year, you know, so. The rest of it is like whatever.
All right. I think we're slowly devolving. Next is consider approval of the JHS baseball trip request.
Is Coach Pickerel is here to answer any questions anybody has.
He has patiently sat almost to the half.
No, he's good. He's good.
I would just like to say, first of all, thank you Ms. Ham for inviting me to speak. I think this is a great opportunity for the program. The landscape of summer baseball is changing with more players being drawn to travel baseball, which means that you kind of have to have a bit of money to be able to play. And I would just like to afford the same opportunity to the players that don't. Because in my mind, there's no reason why those kids, just because they don't have the same funds as someone else, shouldn't have that opportunity. And along those same lines, with this tournament that we're asking to go to, with it being played at the same time as the College World Series, which is awesome, the players will get an opportunity to see high-level baseball. Some of them have aspirations of playing at that level. My hope is that for some of them, it kind of opens their eyes and motivates them to maybe want to reach that level. For others, it may be another eye-opening experience. Maybe I need to tailor my goals a little bit. But playing against some competition that we'll never see during the spring season, going and experiencing that, I think has a huge impact on our program moving forward. It's one of the things when I took over and was hired in last May, that it was one of my goals to strengthen the summer program. Currently we play a lot of the area schools, which are smaller. That goes well for them playing against us, but it doesn't necessarily do well for us in terms of trying to develop and get better. And so this is a step in that direction.
2 questions. Mm-hmm. How many games do you project having with a player?
You're guaranteed 4 games. Obviously, weather permitting, and there may be a chance that you could get more than that if you win. If the weather is not, doesn't allow you to get any games in, there is a refund. But obviously, just like any tournament you would be in, you wouldn't get your full entry fee back.
To at least 4 games.
Yes.
And what means of transportation is being used?
Just like we used last summer, it would be It would be just the players getting themselves out there. So that would be either carpooling with myself or other coaches that are going, or there's always parents with minivans that are more than happy to take players out there with them.
So the funds you've raised, none that goes toward transportation?
No.
Yeah, correct, yeah.
So that's what this money's for?
Yeah, he gets to get it. The funds you raised are for what? Just so everybody understands.
The funds that, well, in the past, they've always taken trips to Disney like every other year, and that's a lot of money for one trip, done and over with. And my thought was, well, if I can maybe kind of reinvest that money and spread it out over, the summertime, and then we can have, more of an opportunity to play at other places, other tournaments where the kids are getting exposure to a high level of play, and college coaches. That would be my goal. So that is ultimately the goal of our fundraising efforts, is to be able to afford to go and play in these tournaments.
I guess I don't understand what you just said.
So
You're talking about there's Omaha trip and there's also summer trips then?
No, this trip is in the summer. Yes.
Misunderstood. Yeah,
This
June,
is the summer
okay.
trip. And
This
by board policy, we got it. By board policy, the board needs to approve.
I think it's great. I think your fundraising efforts have been great, giving these crazy people and money, I'm sure.
It's awesome.
You did a great job, and I think it's excellent that you're trying to get more games and not just the
think it's a really great idea, but I'm still trying to figure out what the $2,000 is gonna pay for.
Well, the $2,000 is an entry fee. It would be an overnight stay. So if we were there for 3 days, I want to be able to pay for the night stay for the players. And also if we were to go to the games, the College World Series games, we would have to pay for the tickets.
Okay.
So
I read this wrong,
right.
because I'm looking at this and I thought, he raised all of this money, what do we even need this for? I got you, okay.
Right.
Thank you.
So yeah, just asking for permission to actually go, since it's a policy related.
I think it's a great idea.
And I'm jealous of great idea.
I was gonna say something along the same lines, membership, and I'm gonna try, and I'm already failing. Sorry. My nephew had an opportunity to go to this camp in Omaha. Sorry, a month before he passed. And it was one of the highlights that he had. For those who might not be familiar with the baseball world, this is a pretty big time frame. Omaha is the facilities is top notch. So I think this is, not that I was disappointed in the Disney trip when we went with the baseball team the year after he passed, but I think this would be, for them, developmentally, I think this would be a great opportunity for the team.
Well, just to see different parts of the country that they probably haven't been to, or a lot of them have never been to, and I commend you for making sure every kid can take advantage of this, even if they can't afford it. So I'm proud of you. This is really great. This is a great opportunity for those young men.
So with that, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Ms. Boone.
Thanks.
Aye.
Francis?
Aye.
Klaskovich?
Yes.
Lyon?
Yes.
Pickrell? Aye. Sherby?
Aye.
Thanks, Coach.
Okay, next on our agenda, the boundary study discussion. Mrs. Pam.
Okay, so everyone has been long awaiting our boundary study. Unfortunately, the person who I think has been most looking forward to it is ill tonight. Mr. Stage.
The full-blown presentation's next month, so we'll get him help.
So I have with me tonight Mrs. Ullrich. Where are you at, Mrs. Ullrich? Oh, she's right back there, sorry. Paulette has done a tremendous amount of work to get this software ready to move forward in terms of us really being able to look at our boundaries and look at how we can more equitably divide our students among the district. So tonight, I'm just going to show you a couple of slides. I'm going to go through kind of the purpose of the software and just show you some really brief pictures. It's going to get everybody excited just to see like the power and the potential use that we have of this software. And then later on this month, on the 27th of February, Member Banks and Member Sherpy have agreed to serve as 2 board members to come in and sit with us for about a 3-hour block of time to go through these various factors and see if we can come up with scenarios that we can put forward in March for options of potential boundary changes for next year to make the sizes of the buildings more equitable. So, as you know, the software is called 5Maps. 5Maps is an advanced mapping software tool that provides insight by loading location data into a really simple and interactive map. And we are not going to see the live version of it, but it is very, very simple to use. Just simply because of technical issues, we didn't want to log on and take a lot of time. But it's wonderful. It evaluates your boundaries and your service zones. So you'll see that we have all of our elementary maps. We'll have Lombard and Churchill on there as well. I don't have examples of Lombard tonight. but you can see exactly where every student is. And then a slide that we'll be looking at here in a moment shows all the different capabilities in terms of narrowing down groups of students. So we didn't just want to see where a student goes to school. We wanted to see where their home school was. We wanted to see where their serving school was. We wanted to see the number of free and reduced students that are within that school boundary at this time. So there's lots of capabilities. And it will also help us to determine where our trends in terms of student achievement are going and how we can potentially bring programs to different schools in the future. Okay, this is very difficult to see, so I apologize. This is a list of all the criteria that we pulled from Skyward to be able to basically filter in various manners throughout this process. So we're going to be able to filter based on absences, birth date, their location, whether they're an EL student, their home school versus serving school because we have so much overflow. We have the park data in here, so park scores. So let's say that we want to take a look at all of our students that exceeded in park EL because we want to do a gifted program. We could sort by that and we could see which schools have those scores and which maybe a gifted program would be best suited for. Same way if we have students that aren't achieving possibly in park that we want to do a summer reading program, we can sort by that data as well. We're also uploading all of our Scantron scores for our local assessment data. And we have our SIS numbers, student grade levels, birth dates, pretty much any combination of how we want to identify and really look at where our students are on our map. We can do that with this software. This is an example of, it's difficult to see, I understand that. And when you start to play with it and it's more an interactive version, these dots that you see actually represent individual students. And when you're in the program and you hover over them, you can click on that dot and it will tell you exactly what student that is, what their address is, and all their demographic information. So this is an overall look at our elementary districts, or our elementary buildings and their boundaries. This is kind of an up-close view. And you can see everything is color-coded. So this is King, and the little bit darker blue dots are all of our King students. And then you can see as you look along here that we have King students from Overflow that are in the Steele School District, or in the Steele area, boundary area, and same way with Nielsen. And then this is a map of King, and this is homeschool detail. So all of these students, these are the students that King is their home school. And they're identified on here. So if we have a student, for instance, here, King is their home school, but they're currently in the Nielsen serving area. And then, sorry, that was homeschool. Sorry. This was serving school, so this is the school they're actually attending. And then I put the two slides together. So this is homeschool versus serving school. And you can see the distribution of students is different. And so our next steps, I mean, there's literally thousands of configurations that you can go through. As I mentioned, Member Banks and Member Sherby will be joining us on February 27th to look at current boundaries. One of the features of the software is you can actually take a drawing tool and you can actually move the boundaries, and it'll automatically then move the children to those new areas. So we'll be sitting and we'll be redrawing things, looking at what is a more equitable distribution of our students. And then hopefully we'll be bringing back some recommendations to the board on March 12th so that we can take a look and have some options for you on what potentially the boundaries will be. Questions?
I have this cart and horse thing again, because you're making decisions based on class sizes, and class sizes, once again, is something that's in our contract, the contract of the teachers. And I would hope that we find the resources to reduce class size in elementary schools. And I think that would skew your data if we ended up having such resources. That's the first comment. The second, I don't think the charge was to equalize the schools, but to maximize the use of the schools that are air conditioned. make sure we won't have empty classrooms there. Did I misunderstand? Is our goal to equalize the elementary schools, regardless of what?
That we need to look at overflow and that impact of where our student populations are and where students are being bused and how that overflow is impacting our students throughout the district. So I think there's a lot of
variables that are.
Yes.
Yes.
I don't know if I'm the cart or the horse, but I would also remind Member Lyon that we were tasked back in November to make sure we brought this forward and not forget.
We need to do it.
We are doing what we were asked to do.
But I hope we're not presupposing a number that we may not have as a number down the road.
Well, the nice thing about 5 maps is if there's a change there, we can quickly, in real time, make that change live on the map and see what happens. So, and we know, we're at, there are some contractual encumbrances or whatever determinations that are going to impact our decision, and we aren't negotiating a new contract. There's a lot of moving parts going on, so this will be data that we can decide to act upon or table once again, or
I want us to get action.
Right, I agree, but but we'll have any number of options.
Thank you.
Questions or comments? Okay. We will move to consider the approval of the transportation services agreement. Mrs. Heenan.
We have before you tonight an agreement with First Student to extend our contract for 1 year while we explore some of the things that Member Lyon has brought up in terms of enrollment, in terms of building usage, in terms of what we're going to do with our facilities moving forward, because there are a lot of unknowns in terms of that, and transportation is highly affected by that. We approached First Student about an extension of their contract until we can get some of those answers, and that's what's before you tonight. It represents a 5% increase from this year's fees from First Students, and I can answer any questions, or Paulette's here as well. We have a couple folks from First Student here as well.
Okay.
I move that we accept it.
Second. Questions?
Can I have a clarification on what midday special education transportation is? These are students who don't attend the full day, is that what that is?
Yes, and then also we have Bright Futures. Do you want
That's a separate contract, that's fine.
Yeah, Bright Futures is separate. The midday is like students that only go for half a day, get out early.
But then it says flat rate per pupil, then it says $54 per run per bus. So is it by child or by the bus? And saying both.
If there's just one student,
It's a minimum charge.
yeah, the minimum.
Okay, so we can have 5 students and it'll be $220.55. 260. It's still $54 regardless of the number of students.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
There's the minimum charge of $54.11.
Right.
Or $56.82 for next year. If there are 2 students, it's still that charge, correct?
Yes.
It only goes above that if you exceed that $56, because it's per student charge.
Wait a minute, it's per run or per student? You just told me it's per
Well,
run.
no, there's a minimum charge of $56. So if you only have 2 students, your charge is $56. If you have more than that, so if it's $8, I don't have it right in front of me.
It
doesn't
show
say.
on here.
It's either flat rate or a run rate. You tell me it's neither. It's both. Am I confused here?
No, the concern is, it's not shown on here. So the bus is $54, but once it hits a certain number of students, and that's the number we don't have on here, is what the number of students is.
The second question on the preschool transportation, does this include a monitor? Or is a monitor in addition to these costs?
In addition.
And what's the cost for that? Doesn't show that either. I think this is well done.
The monitors are in there more. They're at the bottom.
They're at the bottom, supplemental transportation.
Outside. Second last page.
Another page?
The monitor costs are under the special ed. You're in.
Oh, yeah, they're under the POA section. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just for everybody's knowledge too, I had asked for a second bid on if we provided the fuel. And a second bid was provided, and it was substantially lower. However, when we factored in the fuel charge, it was going to be an aggregate of a bigger number. So we went with this bid. Because this was it ended up being not a lot different, but it was less. So, and that was based on some risk that we were going to take on. So it just felt like this was probably better path to take for 1 year.
Okay, there's no other questions. Mrs. Boone?
Parsonage?
Yes.
Lyon?
Yes.
Pickram?
Aye.
Sharpie? Banks? Strontes?
Aye. Okay, next item, consider approval of revised job descriptions, Mr. Bradburn.
We had a meeting with the high school custodians last week to address some of the zones, to increase efficiencies and cleanliness of the building. It was a very productive meeting. They wanted to basically tweak some of the rooms and make some changes. They collaborated on that, and that's what you have before you with the job descriptions were changed to reflect those different efficiencies in the zones of the high school.
Do I have a motion to approve? Any questions?
Yes. If a custodian comes in at 2:30 and school gets out at 3 o'clock, what time is high school today? 3 o'clock. Do they really mop the bathrooms twice? The job description says they do. Is that a default and we just don't? I'm glad they have job descriptions.
I would actually say depending on the activity that's happening in the building, it could be, it could very well be mopped twice.
Depends on their zone.
Yeah, that's true.
Right, but it says that for all of the jobs. Okay. It seems that.
As long as it's mopped at the end of their shift, you know, if they have to mop it once or twice depending on the activity. It just needs to be cleaned when they're done.
This works, that's great.
Yeah, the meeting was very productive. They brought forth a lot of really good ideas.
And will this, Mr. Bradburn, my only question is, was part of the conversation with this reconfiguration, part of it around the fact that there are so many activities and how they, like, my concern is, because I'm in a lot of the high school buildings a lot after hours for a variety of reasons, are the custodians communicated with about what the activities are so that then they're also making use of their time so that they know if there's an activity that's happening, that I need to adjust the way I'm going to clean this area based on what's going on in the evening?
That was discussed during the meeting, which gyms, who's gonna help with certain gyms. Sometimes I think what I call a split between custodians because of different activities. So yes, it was discussed.
Okay, the reason I ask is because I've had opportunities to be in certain buildings and sometimes custodians aren't aware that there's gonna be an activity in that location. So how are the custodians communicated with about the activities that are occurring?
Updated schedule, and they also talked about either having working radios. It was at that meeting, having working radios or having everybody's cell phone available so they knew to contact each other, especially if there were subs. That was a specific point in that meeting.
Do they have working radios for us?
We don't have enough, and so that was, we are getting them.
Yeah, that needs to be addressed. That's the safety issue.
Yeah, we are getting them. We made sure in the interim that they're, and I also asked to make sure there was a repeater in the room during this. So, But in the interim, to make sure that we had enough, everybody who was cell numbers so that we did not until we get enough.
And it's my understanding then that all of the community activities are also on the calendars, right? So the folks that are using our facilities for reasons like Y activities and things like that are also on those calendars.
They are.
Yes, they're supposed to be notified of that.
Okay.
That's, I'm not gonna guarantee 100% that that's happening in every building, but something I can check on.
I would appreciate that because it's not happening in every
Then one of these is the halftime position at Willard. So there'd be 2.5 custodians at Willard then?
That's correct.
And what do we have?
Sorry.
Is that what we have currently?
Yes.
Any other questions? Mrs. Boone?
Lyon?
Yes.
Pickle? Aye. Sharpie?
Aye.
Banks?
Aye.
Sabatos?
Aye.
Glasnovich? Aye.
Moving on to the next agenda item, personnel. Consider approval of the personnel report, Mr. Brenner.
You have the personnel agenda before you. There's one correction I have on the second page involving a cross-categorical paraprofessional. The hours of the week need to be corrected from 31.25 hours to 33.75. That's the only edit. We have to take the questions.
Is that under appointments on
It's under appointments, yeah. It's after, it's under resignation, termination, and then the next is appointments. It's a cross-categorical para.
Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Any other additional questions?
You meeting these new principals today? I don't think so. Really? Who's that? Welcome. Not yet, maybe Willard himself.
That's right.
Make sure, of course not.
Right.
One final interview?
Please no. Any other questions? Mrs. Boone?
Pickle? Aye. Sharpie?
Aye.
Banks?
Aye.
Sabatos?
Aye.
Glasnovich? Aye. Lyon?
Yes.
And just like that, folks, you know, if you're 2 hours and 20 minutes later, we have met the almost end.
1 second.
Yeah.
Just so everybody knows, this is Amy Nielsen. She is the new principal at King Elementary. We're sorry that Joan is leaving, but welcome aboard, Amy. Amy has taught at Farmington for the last
11 years.
11 years. You taught at Lombard, what year? How many? 3 years.
3 years at Lombard.
He's had a daughter that's a graduate of GHS. She has 2 students in the system still. Resident position. Oh, we're gonna find a person.
Right.
We like it when our positions are filled. And our other candidate is presenting in Chicago at the Raising Student Achievement
Yes,
for ESSA.
that's she'll be back. She'll be here next.
She'll be here next month. Yes. Great.
Okay, now, comments by the board. I'm going to start on my left, Member Banks.
I think I've made enough
I definitely
I really do enjoy the school reports and seeing what all the schools are doing.
Member Lyon.
Well, I said a lot. This past Thursday evening, I went to GHS for the junior high production. And it's always nice to see kids performing and the opportunity from some different, but I sure would hope that in the future they do it in one of their home schools. It's a big part of the school, and they're little kids, and their bodies and voices all get lost in that big barn, and the principal should be able to agree on what school it's going to be at. It'd be really nice. But it was a nice production.
But it also gives them a taste of what it's like at the high school, and you know, there's some.
But it's an artistic activity. It was a terrible venue.
I know. Kids did a nice job. Alice at Wonderland, so we're.
Member Glasnovich.
I have no comment.
Member Sharpie.
No comments from me.
Member Pickle. I have comments. I just wanted to, there's a lot going on in our district, and I wanted to highlight, and I actually mentioned to Dr. Asplin about the possibility of having some of the students that have reached some achievements in the last couple of weeks. We've had some, so it's the end of winter sports season. We do have a state qualifier for wrestling for the first time in a number of years. It's something that was elusive to my son, darn it, but very proud of Robert Castellano, and he'll be traveling to the University of Illinois at the end of this week to compete at the state level. We had another sectional qualifier with that. We had 3 sectional qualifiers for bowling. It's my understanding that the men's swim team set some Western Big Six records this past week at their conference meet. So, you know, they're doing all of this on top of being students and on top of working and on top of you know, all of their lives. So it was a busy week for some of our students. And so I just wanted to take a moment to recognize that. And I'm really curious if anybody can find out the high 3-game and 6-game that Alyssa Theobald has that got her 2 sectionals, because I still have those records on the books at the high school. So I'm just kind of curious myself.
You're the record holder?
I am the record holder currently for those. So, I'm just curious. You know, didn't see those numbers posted in the register mail, so just kind of like, huh, that could be some, oh, high game. I have high game and high 3 game. Sorry. Anyway, all right, so now any future agenda items? Okay, we are going into closed session for the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of an employee and pending litigation. Do I have a motion to go into closed session? Ms. Boone?
Kirby?
Aye.
Thanks.
Aye.
Swanton?
Aye.
Pastovich? Aye. Klein?
Yes.
And Crum? Aye.
Thank you very much, folks.